My boyfriend humiliated me and made me pay the bill, so I humiliated him in front of my family. My name is Mary Beth Gentry, and I'm still trying to come to terms with what happened last month. Even now, writing this down feels surreal, like I'm describing someone else's life. But it happened. All of it. It started with a simple work dinner I was invited to by my boyfriend of nearly 2 years, Quentin Harlow. I thought it would be a step forward in our relationship. Instead, it turned out to be the night I realized everything I believed about Quentin was wrong. We had been together long enough that I thought I knew who he was. Quentin had his quirks. He was a bit overly direct sometimes, occasionally dismissive about my job, and he had a habit of making odd little comments about my appearance. That sweater makes your shoulders look broader, or have you ever tried pulling your hair back more often? Small things, but they added up. Still, I brushed them off. I thought he was just being honest. So when he invited me to meet some colleagues at a high-end bistro downtown, I was genuinely touched. Quentin rarely mixed his professional life with our personal one. They're more corporate than friendly, he'd always say. But that week, he said he wanted me to meet them. I went all out, new outfit, carefully done makeup, everything. When I arrived only 2 minutes late, thanks to terrible parking, he barely acknowledged me. He was already seated with 2 men I later learned were Lowell and Dean, from his office. Quentin stood halfway, gave a clipped, "You're late," and sat back down. He glanced at my dress and said, not quietly, "That's what you picked?" His friends exchanged a look. My cheeks burned. It wasn't revealing or flashy, just a navy wrap dress. I tried to laugh it off. I must have missed the dress code memo. From there, the night spiraled downward. For the next hour, Quentin dominated the conversation with work stories. Whenever I tried to contribute, talking about a difficult customer I had at the furniture store I manage, he'd wave me off. "Retail's different," he said at one point. "She's great with people, but she doesn't really get the business world." I swallowed my pride, smiled politely, and kept eating the pasta I'd ordered, carefully chosen for its low price. But the jabs didn't stop. He joked about carbs and running marathons. He laughed about bold food choices for someone who's not training. I pushed the pasta around, appetite gone. Then came the moment I'll never forget. Lowell asked how we met. I started to answer, explaining how Mindy, a friend of Quentin's from work, introduced us. But Quentin cut me off and said, "Yeah, Mindy felt bad for her." I figured I'd do a good deed. He chuckled. That was the first time my stomach dropped. Later, when the bill came, Quentin looked it over, slid it across to me, and said, "You know what? This isn't working." He didn't lower his voice. "I'm just not attracted to you anymore. I think we should end things." And then, as he got up, he added, loud enough for everyone to hear, "A woman like you should be thankful I dated her this long." He turned and walked out, with Lowell and Dean leaving me with a $326 bill. I don't remember how I held it together, but I did. I paid the bill with a nearly maxed-out credit card, left a tip, and walked to my car with tears stinging my eyes. Then I called Mindy. She came over within the hour, armed with chocolate in comforting disbelief. And that's when things really started unraveling. Over tea and quiet fury, Mindy told me Quentin wasn't who he said he was. He wasn't on track for promotion. He didn't lead any projects. He was, in fact, a junior assistant, not a marketing lead. The stories he told me, the trips he claimed he'd taken for business, none of them were true. And he had lied about me, too. He'd told his coworkers I was clingy and always talking about marriage. Funny, considering he was the one with a Pinterest board titled Future Home Ideas. That night, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through old messages, noting the inconsistencies, business dinners that never happened, photos taken from corporate websites, explanations that now made no sense. The facade he built had cracks all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Then, just past 3 a.m., a text popped up. "Hi, this is Kenton from Quentin's office. Mindy gave me your number. There's some stuff you should know." The message from Kenton Bloom lingered on my screen for several seconds before I gathered the nerve to reply. Something about it felt different, not just gossip or pity, but purpose. I responded with a cautious, "What kind of stuff?" He asked if we could talk the next day. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe a few blocks from my apartment. When I walked in the next morning, Kenton stood to greet me. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of gentle energy you rarely find in corporate circles. We got our drinks, and once we sat down, he didn't waste time. "I want to be upfront," he said. "Quentin isn't who he says he is. At work, or with you. He's told people a lot of things, and most of them aren't true." That conversation lasted over an hour. Kenton laid everything bare, Quentin had lied about his position, exaggerating a basic administrative role into a managerial one. He wasn't being promoted, he was actually on probation for submitting another colleague's presentation as his own. His so-called business trips were really just long weekends off, and those dinner meetings? Fabrications. But it's more than just the lying, Kenton said. He speaks poorly of you. Told people you were obsessed with getting married, that you couldn't handle his schedule, that he was only still with you out of guilt. The words hit hard. I felt nauseous. Embarrassed. Angry. But mostly? Sad. Sad that I'd let someone so small convince me I was the one who needed to feel lucky. I thanked Kenton and walked home through the cool breeze of early spring, trying to make sense of what I just heard. But before I even made it through my front door, my phone rang again. Tamsin Harlow, Quentin's mother. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was soft, strained. Mary Beth. I know it's not my place, but I just wanted to check in. Quentin told us you two had a small disagreement but were working through it. He said you'd be coming to his birthday dinner Saturday. I froze. I told her the truth, or at least, a gentle version of it. We're taking some space, I said, and changed the subject. But my mind was spinning. Why would he tell his family we were still together? Tamsin went on to talk about how excited the family was for the dinner. He said you two had some exciting news, she added brightly. You're not pregnant, are you? She laughed softly, unaware of the storm she had just walked into. After the call, I told Mindy everything. She was livid. He's trying to rewrite the story, she said. He's setting himself up as the victim. We sat in silence for a long time before she said, you should go to the dinner. My first instinct was no. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was right. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And not just for me. Quentin's family deserved to know the person they were celebrating. I reached out to Kenton, told him about the dinner, and asked if he'd be willing to help. He didn't hesitate. Absolutely, he said. There's more people need to know. Over the next 2 days, I compiled screenshots, text messages, photos, proof of his lies. Mindy helped me organize everything. We even found posts on his social media showing off work trips he never took. Friday night, we prepared. Picked out something modest but elegant. Not to show off. To show strength. We rehearsed what I'd say if asked. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to speak truth. Saturday came faster than I expected. Around noon, Quentin texted. Looking forward to tonight. You'll look beautiful. My parents are excited. Let's try to keep it peaceful. I didn't respond. I drove to the Harlow house in silence. The familiar sight of their picket fence and blooming tulips felt like walking back into a dream you didn't want to revisit. Tamsin greeted me warmly, just as she always had. Their house smelled like cinnamon and roast chicken. For a moment, I felt a sting of nostalgia. I had genuinely liked Quentin's family. That was what made this so painful. The living room was full. Quentin stood near the fireplace, laughing at something his cousin said. His face dropped when he saw me. He recovered quickly, walked over, and said through clenched teeth, "What are you doing?" I smiled politely. "Just here for your birthday, like you told everyone I would be." He looked around, clearly unsettled. "Can we talk privately?" I shook my head and said louder, "Not now. Your mom's about to bring out the appetizers." He fell silent. As we sat at the dining table, I noticed Quentin's dad, Marshall, asking about a big marketing deal Quentin had supposedly closed. Quentin launched into a vague monologue about restructuring initiatives and client negotiations. I watched as Kayla, his sharp-tongued younger sister, narrowed her eyes. Then, Tamsin smiled at me and said, "So, what's the big news? Are you two finally moving in together?" I took a breath. Actually, I think there's something more important to share. Just as I opened my mouth, the doorbell rang. Kenton stepped in, carrying a thin envelope. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "Quentin, these were left on your desk at the office." Tamsin, ever the perfect hostess, insisted he stay for cake. Quentin looked ready to bolt. But Marshall stopped him. "Son, you've been dodging this all night. Why not handle it here? We're all family." Kenton sat beside me. "Funny," I said. "Kenton's actually been helping me learn a lot about Quentin." There was a pause. A long one. Kenton took out his phone and began showing screenshots. Messages, timestamps, emails. Proof. Tamsin looked like she might cry. Marshall looked like he might break the table in half. And Quentin? He looked like the carefully constructed version of himself had just crumbled. There was no chaos. No shouting match. Just a long, still pause that hung over the table like fog. Quentin sat there, jaw clenched, while Kenton showed his phone to Marshall and Tamsin. Kayla leaned over to peek too. The evidence was undeniable: dates that didn't line up, a resume that didn't match internal records, and photos of Quentin at work events, photos he'd copied from his company's website. "Quentin," Tamsin finally said, her voice trembling, "you told us you were leading these projects." Quentin's eyes darted around the table, looking for escape. "This is being blown out of proportion," he said. "Kenton has always had it out for me." That was when Kayla, never one to let nonsense pass, chimed in. "I work in marketing, Quentin. Restructuring initiative? That's not a thing. And you've never once talked about your actual responsibilities." Quentin chuckled nervously. "I don't share everything. I'm a private person." "You're a dishonest person," Marshall said quietly. The table went silent again. I cleared my throat. I hadn't come here to revel in anyone's downfall, but the moment demanded clarity. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone," I said. "I came because Quentin invited me under false pretenses. He told you we were still together, that we were planning to move in. He told you we had good news to share." "None of that is true." Tamsin's face crumpled in a way that made me feel more sadness than satisfaction. "Why would he lie to us like that?" "Because," I said carefully, "he wanted to stay the hero in the version of this story he created." Then I told them everything. About the dinner. About the public breakup. About the check he left me with. About the things he said. Every word hung heavy, but I spoke them calmly, clearly. Kayla whispered unbelievable under her breath more than once. Tamsin pressed her hand to her mouth. Marshall didn't move at all. Quentin interrupted halfway through. "She's twisting it. That wasn't how it went." Kenton cleared his throat. "You literally bragged about it to Dean and Lowell. Said you were testing her limits. I have the messages." Quentin stood up then, knocking his chair back. "You all want to believe her? Fine. She was never right for me. Always clinging. Always trying to change me. She should be grateful I gave her a chance." And that was when Tamsin stood. The kind of standing that made everyone else at the table straighten instinctively. She walked around the table slowly and stood between me and Quentin. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried more weight than any yelling ever could. "You don't speak to anyone like that in this house," she said. "Especially not someone who was kind enough to show up after what you did." Quentin opened his mouth, but no words came out. Tamsin turned to me. "Marybeth, I am so sorry. I truly thought he had changed. Thank you for telling us the truth." Quentin didn't sit back down. He muttered something about needing air and stormed toward the front door. We heard it slam shut seconds later. For a moment, the only sound was the soft clink of silverware as Kayla straightened the place settings. Then Marshall said, "Let's have some cake." We did. It wasn't a celebration, but a moment of strange peace. A quiet acknowledgement that sometimes the truth must walk through the front door and sit down before anything can begin to heal. I stayed after dinner. Helped Tamsin wash dishes. She told me stories about Quentin as a child, stories filled with warmth, but also concern. "We didn't always see it," she said. "But there were moments. Little signs. I think we wanted to believe he'd grow out of them." "He still can," I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. That night, as I left, Marshall walked me to my car. "You did the right thing," he said. "Hard things don't always feel right when you do them. But they are." I drove home feeling exhausted, but strangely calm. Like I'd finally put something down that I had been carrying for far too long. When I got home, I saw Quentin had tried to call me twice. I blocked the number. I thought it was over. I really did. But then, the next morning, my phone buzzed with a flurry of missed calls, from Tamsin, from Kayla, even from Kenton. Something had happened overnight. And it wasn't just a meltdown. The flurry of missed calls was unlike anything I had ever seen. 4 from Tamsin. 2 from Kayla. 1 from Kenton. Even one from an unfamiliar number I would later learn belonged to Quentin's former co-worker, Arliss, who had always kept his distance until now. Something had snapped. I called Tamsin first. She picked up on the first ring, her voice tight, shaken. "He came to the house at 3 in the morning, Marybeth," she said. He was out of control. My chest tightened. What happened? She took a breath. He was yelling about betrayal, about being humiliated. He woke the whole street. Marshall had to physically remove him from the porch. He left, but not before screaming that he'd make people regret turning against him. Tamsin paused. Marybeth, he mentioned you. Repeatedly. That's when the doorbell rang. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. Peering through the peephole, I saw my building's property manager, Mr. Hatley. Kind, elderly, always carrying a clipboard. He gave me a small, sympathetic smile as I opened the door. I wanted to let you know, he said, there was some disturbance early this morning. A man was outside the building, asking for you by name. Security escorted him off the premises. My skin crawled. Back inside, I told Mindy everything. She was already halfway into her coat, ready to show up at Quentin's doorstep. But I didn't want confrontation. I wanted peace. I wanted distance. And most of all, I wanted protection. I called Kayla. She confirmed it. Quentin had been spiraling since the dinner. Not just with his family. At work too. According to her, the screenshots and revelations Quentin had shared had made their way up the chain of command. Quentin had been suspended. HR was now conducting a formal review. He spent the whole day sending these dramatic messages, she said. Then he posted this long rant about being stabbed in the back by cowards and women who don't know loyalty. It didn't stop there. Mindy texted me screenshots from his social media. In one private group post, Quentin had shared an old photo of me clearly taken when I was asleep, captioned, "The truth always comes out." She wasn't who she claimed to be. It didn't even make sense. But the intent was clear. Humiliation. Retaliation. Only, it wasn't working. Because something unexpected had happened in the wake of the dinner, people were talking. Arliss messaged me with an apology, saying he wished he'd spoken up sooner about Quentin's behavior at work. A former college friend of his emailed me after seeing the Facebook post and shared that Quentin had lied about being on their university's debate team. He was the equipment guy, she said. He once claimed he had a scholarship. That never happened. Piece by piece, Quentin's carefully built image was collapsing. But the turning point came later that week. Tamsin and Kayla came to visit me. They brought pastries and chamomile tea and sat with me on my tiny couch like it was the most natural thing in the world. Kayla had a manila envelope in her bag. Inside were messages Quentin had sent to his family, blaming them for allowing an outsider to poison everything. Tamsin's eyes were glassy. I thought if we supported him long enough, he'd grow into the man we hoped he'd become. I see now, we were holding space for someone who had no intention of changing. We talked for hours. Not just about Quentin, but about disappointment, and silence, and the pain of letting go. It wasn't just healing for me. It was healing for them, too. That evening, as they were leaving, Tamsin hugged me tightly and said, "You gave us truth. It wasn't easy, but you gave us something real. Don't forget that." The next day, Quentin called. "Quentin was officially let go this morning," he said. He cleared out his desk in silence. No theatrics. Just walked out with a box and didn't say goodbye to anyone. There was no joy in Quentin's voice. Just quiet relief. "I wanted you to know," he added. "You weren't alone. You weren't the only one he lied to. But you were the only one brave enough to say something out loud." I thanked him. We hung up. That night, I sat on my porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the evening light fade into the trees. There was still sadness, still confusion. But underneath it all was something steadier, peace. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. And that was before I saw Quentin one final time. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I had gone to the store for a new shower curtain, something simple, something fresh. I'd been slowly reclaiming my space. Replacing small things that reminded me of Quentin. Rearranging furniture. Clearing the air. That's when I saw him. He was in the same aisle, holding a pack of socks. His shoulders were slumped. His clothes looked wrinkled. There were dark circles beneath his eyes. For a moment, our eyes met. Neither of us spoke. He opened his mouth, then seemed to think better of it. He turned and walked away, abandoning his basket mid-aisle. That was the last time I saw Quentin Harlow. I don't know where he went after that. I heard through Kayla that he moved in with an uncle out of state. His social media went silent. The few friends who'd once championed him slowly distanced themselves. His story faded into the background noise of life. But mine didn't. I continued living. Not in defiance. Not in bitterness. In peace. The apartment became my sanctuary. Mindy and I resumed our weekend coffee dates. Kenton and I kept in touch, and over time, he became not just a friend but a steady, comforting presence in my life. We weren't rushing into anything, just letting life happen gently for once. Tamsin sent me a holiday card that winter. Inside it was a handwritten note: "I still think of you as family. Thank you for helping us see the truth." It was bittersweet. But it also reminded me our choices ripple far beyond us. Looking back now, I see the girl I was sitting at that restaurant table, cheeks flushed with shame, unsure whether to cry or laugh at the absurdity of it all. And I see the woman I am now, rooted, not hardened. Wiser, but still soft. Capable of choosing herself over someone else's comfort. If there's anything this story taught me, it's this. Truth, no matter how painful, is never the villain. Silence is. Silence is what allows cruelty to masquerade as charm. It's what lets manipulation hide behind politeness. It's what allows someone like Quentin to continue without consequence. But not this time. This time, truth spoke up. And when it did, it echoed. In dinner tables. In quiet text messages. In the minds of those who had once believed the fiction. Justice, when it comes, isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like a man walking out of a Target, defeated. Sometimes it's a cup of tea shared with someone who once called you a stranger. Sometimes it's a quiet evening spent with your own thoughts, finally at rest. And sometimes it's just knowing that your voice, steady and clear, helped end a story that needed to end. Not because you wanted to break someone, but because you needed to rebuild yourself. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.